To order. Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Arata, absent. Commissioner Bajaj, absent. Commissioner Funabashi,
Present.
Commissioner Nafisi, absent. Commissioner Beely,
Present.
Commissioner Sao,
Present.
Chair Simpson.
I am here.
Thank you.
I guess we should salute the flag. Commissioner Funabashi, can you lead us, please?
It would be my pleasure. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any blue folder items?
There are no blue folder items.
Okay, and I guess we move on to the consent calendar. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't approve the order of the agenda, did we?
No.
Could I have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
Motion to approve the order of agenda.
And is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, we probably can just do a voice vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? On order of the agenda is approved. We have no blue folder items. Consent calendar. Is there anything there that anybody would like to pull out and take up separately, or can we just have a motion to approve the entire consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented in that order.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none. Let's do a roll call on that, please.
Okay, and for the record, we did not have any e-comments on consent calendar. And we do have one attendee on Zoom, but they did not raise their hand. So,
Okay.
do you want a voice vote?
Let's
Roll call.
have a,
Sure.
call the roll.
Commissioner Funabashi,
Aye.
Commissioner Beely,
Aye.
Commissioner Sao,
Aye.
Chair Simpson.
Aye. Okay, consent calendar is approved. We're now down to item H. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public who would like to address the commission on anything at this time that's not on the agenda. So anything whatsoever that, what think might be of interest to us. If you want to talk about something that's on the agenda, we'll ask for your comments when that item comes up. So any comments on non-agenda items at this point? Okay, seeing none in the audience, are there any online comments on agenda items?
No, there's no
Okay.
one raising their hand.
We've got nothing continued from previous agendas, and I guess we now go to letter J, and J1, which is the follow-up discussion and possible action on the red curb modifications and traffic calming measures along Meyer Lane, 190th to Ralston. So I guess we'll have a presentation on that.
Good evening, Commissioners and Chair Simpson, Ryan Liu, City Traffic Engineer. The first item before you tonight is red curbs on Meyer Lane and potential traffic calming measures within a study area between 190th Street and Ralston Lane. Just some timeline and background on what has occurred. Red curbs were previously discussed at the Commission in 2018 and January of this year, based on residents, various residents' requests to reduce red curbs, and then after the January Public Works and Sustainability Commission meeting, a referral from the council member for District 3 to look at the whole block of Meyer Lane between 190th and Ralston. In January of 2024, the commission voted to recommend a resident survey and to explore traffic calming measures. So to survey residents on each proposed red curb reduction and present those results at a later meeting. This meeting is today. Throughout this whole process, engineers from the city, including myself, visited Meyer Lane numerous times to evaluate visibility at each driveway to current engineering standards. We did not find any geometric attributes on Meyer that would warrant red curbs beyond what is typically provided at a driveway in the city. There is no set standard for red curbs at a driveway. You may notice that on other streets in the city, most driveways don't have any red curb. We do provide a courtesy service to mark the slopes of driveways red to help prevent people from blocking driveways. Sometimes we paint red curbs at intersections or at driveways that have a higher number of volumes or a lot of commercial traffic. But other than that, there isn't really a set standard for red curbs at driveways. So since the January meeting, besides our engineering analysis, we also collected data from the residents and traffic and speed data as well. This picture on the right here is sort of what our survey looked like. It was primarily done on Google Forms that allowed residents to look at each red curb location and provide a vote in support or opposition of each proposed red curb reduction. Here is a map showing all the different responses that were received. So the area inside this red polygon is the survey area of Meyer Lane between 190th and Ralston. The blue dots represent the responses that were received. We received about an 18% response rate, 291 residents on the block, and we received 52 responses from our survey. We typically received more responses from complexes with homeowners associations or townhomes. Perhaps there's more organized communication between those residents to take that survey. Of particular note, we only received 2 responses from single-family house lots. Now, this block is mostly multifamily, with a section of single-family homes on the west side of the street. We only received 2 responses from residents with driveways that only serve their own residents. And we only received 1 response from a business. Relative to the commercial loading zone in front of 510 Meyer, we also visited the businesses there to determine what was their appetite for reducing the loading zone hours. The reason there's a loading zone there is that 510 Meyer has an on-site weight restriction, so they have to perform their loading in the street. Here are the results of the survey that was performed. Each column is a location where residents had an opportunity to weigh in with yes, no, or blank responses. As you can see here, there was general broad majority support for red curb reductions and for shifting the loading zone start time from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. City staff, we don't have an opinion on what constitutes a high enough support threshold that could warrant a recommendation to remove red curbs. But generally, most residents were in favor of adding more parking spaces back to the community. There was a pattern of responses where residents would vote in favor of every other location except the driveway that they lived at. So, there's a pattern of that. We would also like to highlight the response submitted by 711 Meyer, which is a single-family home. That location did receive majority support, but the resident at 711 Meyer was not in favor of removing the red curb at their driveway. But this type of case is sort of repeated at other locations, except those are mostly multifamily driveways. There were 10 responses in opposition of any changes, mostly from 609 and 700 Meyer. Here's another way of looking at the survey results. So this is as shown on a map with percent supports for each location. This map was mailed to residents as part of the noticing for this item so that residents could learn the results of the survey before this meeting. And as I mentioned before, if every single location were recommended for red curb removal, that would restore approximately 16 parking spaces. But the commission is welcome to provide a different threshold of support depending on our discussion and public input. Even if these locations were recommended for removal of red curbs, there would still be red curb at various driveways, sometimes beyond of what is typically provided at an intersection. There is recent state law that prohibits parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk, but that's pertaining to intersections. At the January 2024 meeting, the commission also provided a recommendation to explore traffic calming measures. We heard from the community and the commission that there was a desire to control speeds. So we performed 7 days of speed and volume counts. So this was a count collection device that was placed in the road for 24 hours, 7 days straight. The collection location was placed at the section of Meyer Lane where speeds were expected to be the highest. So it was approximately halfway between 190th Street and the dip in the middle of Meyer Lane. That location has the least variability compared to the sections of Meyer Lane north of the dip and closer to the Ralston intersection, where there might be lots of vehicles turning to and from Ralston that might be going at a much lower speed. We also took counts at the Meyer-Ralston intersection and found that only 15% of the traffic approaching that intersection originated from Ralston. We had heard some suggestions to put an always stop at this intersection, but at this time we do not recommend an always stop at Meyer and Ralston because Ralston is the terminating street at Meyer, and such little traffic originates from that street that it doesn't make much engineering sense to require every single vehicle on Meyer to stop, 85% of the traffic to stop for 15% of the traffic. As you can see on the chart here, the 7-day average daily traffic is about 3,400 or 3,500 vehicles per day. That is actually above the threshold, the city's policy threshold for installing speed cushions. And the 85th percentile speed of 31 miles per hour is below the city's threshold for speed cushions. So based on the city's speed cushion policy, this street doesn't meet the thresholds to install speed cushions. An alternative traffic calming measure could be the installation of radar feedback signs. That could perhaps reduce 85th percentile speeds if that's the desire and recommendation of the commission. And so this is all the data that was collected and the survey. And so some of the alternatives could be to recommend red curb reductions and or loading zone hours based on staff's analysis, public input, and the various, the level of support for each location. The commission could also choose to not recommend any changes or any other options as determined by the commission.
Okay. Any questions about the presentation? Is that pretty straightforward?
Excuse me, I had one question to confirm, because in the survey results, 701 Meyer stood out the most. That's the one commercial business that did the survey, is that right? In the 7-Eleven parking lot there?
701 Meyer is, I believe, closer to the 7-Eleven, yes.
Okay, yeah. 'Cause I just noticed that even though they were in favor of removing of red, that was the closest yes and no than compared to all the other addresses on that. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I guess we should probably ask for public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're referring to 701 or?
701 Meyer is,
That one's not closest to that's actually 511.
okay.
So
Can we go back
511
to the
Meyer-
map? Just for my
Yeah.
own curiosity, 701, okay.
So 701 is here with the 56% support. That's still further up the block. The one next to 711
okay.
has a similar level, 58%. This one down at 511.
Right, and so, yeah, and I'm looking at, okay. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? No? Can we get public comment? You have people to call?
We definitely have people to talk. We've got Cynthia Prevey and then Douglas McAdams will be next.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Cynthia Prevey. My husband Ted and I live at 700 Meyer Lane in unit number 1. So we do face the street and we face the red zone. We actually moved into our house after watching it being built, which was a very exciting event for us, January 27th, 2001. As soon as we moved in, we knew we had an issue. I was working in Orange County at that time, and I pulled out of my driveway one of those first mornings, thinking that I had pulled out safely, only to have a woman come screaming up the road, and she was on my rear end, and she was mad. She thought I pulled out in front of her. I couldn't see her. I did not see her. Now, at that time, the red zone was 30 feet, what you are proposing for us now. So after 6 months, we had our first HOA meeting at my home, and we invited our then city council person, Mike Ginn. I invited him over so he could talk to us about this parking issue in this red zone. And as he was leaving our meeting, he had an issue. And it was unsafe that he determined that pulling out of our driveway was. So the next day, we had that red line extended to where it is now, 50 feet. In 2018, we had this issue with City Council again. We all let you all know that this was a dangerous situation that you would put us in. We have 16 single-family homes on our property. That's 32 cars minimum. Those cars are carrying their children. I'm carrying my grandchildren and my great-granddaughter out of my driveway. I would like for it to be safe, and it is not going to be safe if you reduce that red zone. I've actually taken pictures, and I tried to submit a comment today online. Those pictures didn't go through, but I did take some photos of what it is like for me to pull out of my driveway with the garbage can there. From across the street at 701, they do pull their garbage cans across the street and put them in the red zone. The mailman pulls up, Amazon pulls up, UPS, FedEx, everyone pulls up and uses that red zone during the day, making it extremely difficult for us to pull out safety. So I would implore you to really listen to us. We are 16 single-family homes with a minimum of 32 cars and all of the children on our property that we want to maintain safe. I would implore you to please do not reduce the red zone in front of 700 Meyer Lane and put us all in danger. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Douglas? And then the next person will be Jeremy Douglas.
Good evening, Douglas McAdams. I'm at the same property, 700 Meyer Lane. I'm in unit number 9. I spoke to you guys back in January. There's been 16 units in the complex. 4 of the units have had an accident pulling out of this driveway in the last 10 years, me being one. We're at fault when you do that. I'm at fault. I was at fault when I pulled out. I couldn't see what was coming. So I'm like Cynthia, I implore you guys to think about it. It's a public safety issue, right? 4 out of 16 units, it's 25%. I know the traffic study said it's not I guess a code issue, but you gotta look at reality, right? 25% of the units have had an accident in the last 10 years. So there's 3,400 vehicles going up and down that street every day. And I know that, the study said 85% of them are 30 miles or 31 miles per hour. 15% are going a lot faster than that, all right? Some of that 15% are going a lot faster than that. So it only takes one of those guys, or one of those persons, excuse me, let me be gender correct here, to broadside somebody coming out of that driveway, and you're gonna have some serious injuries or possibly a fatality. I mean, there's been studies on broadside collisions, and it's one of the most dangerous collisions you can be in. It's worse than having a rear end. So I hope you take that into account when you make your decision. It's not just a code issue here, guys. This is reality. It's public safety for one spot in front of our complex. It just doesn't make sense to me. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jeremy Douglas?
Hello. I'm new to the neighborhood. I'm sorry to hear about my neighbors down the street. I'm up at 800, multi-unit apartment complex. I think we got about 30-something units in there with reasonable parking for units. There seems to be parking available that we need over there because a lot of people in our complex are using their garages for storage or playrooms, or one guy's got a gym in his garage, and so consequently there's parking around that gets tight. I unfortunately have a truck that's just a little too tall for the old garages, and I have to put it in the street as much as I'd love to put it in a garage, which we're working on, trying to new door possibly. But what I see, some section, I would certainly support speed mitigation there. More speed bumps, take it up the street, pick them from Ralston, slow them down coming down the hill. If these folks are in danger in the other, with this 700 block, I have no idea, obviously new to the block. So I think that it's a great, it should be a slow street. We got school, church, businesses, kids going up and down. And if we could put some speed bumps other than the big dip, that's there, that's sort of halfway or a quarter of the way up the hill. I think we could do something. The speed radar thing will just piss off people with a flashing light all night. The lights going off and whatever, and then we got more light pollution. So that's probably not a good alternative. I think speed bumps, kids with, the lower, faster cars are gonna hit it, they're not gonna like it. Big trucks are gonna fly, they're gonna slow them down. So go with the speed bumps. I'd like to bring up a street that may not be a street. It's called Narramore Way, which you posted up there. It's a dead-end apartment. There's houses, rental properties. Apparently, I just found out was an old estate, and that was a private driveway that's now turned into rental units. And it's a big, wide open dead end. And it's red all the way down, and the people who live there use it when they can, hopefully not getting a ticket. But I would see if that could be opened up with some spaces, in that, 4, 6, 8, because again, a lot of around my cluster, it gets crowded. I end up having to park some nights all the way up by Ralston at the end and hiking down. Not the end of the world, but it'd be nice to be a little closer if I could, and sure my guests or anybody coming to visit me, because there's no guest parking on our property either. So any guests to the houses, anybody's got to park in the street, and you got a lot of people in that building. So I think in the consideration, I'd like to see some red reduction, but not necessarily in the safety of the people in the 700 block, because they have a whole different situation going on. But the 800 block units are certainly wide open, except for I was informed the people at the top of the hill, if we get too many cars going up the hill, they can't see the traffic coming up. So we got to find that happy medium. I think your 2-car space is it, if that's going to, and that'll allow enough gap. And then let's look at this Narramore. If that's public, let's grab some of that land, Narramore. Is it private? Obviously, we can't do anything about it, but it's got a public sign on it. It's got Redondo Beach, Narramore Way. It's a big, wide space. So my request would be to look into that. Thank you.
Michelle Aragon?
We live at 511 Meyer, Unit 24. We moved in January of 2020. We have talked with the city. I've talked with Mr. Liu via email, and he's been very helpful about the red curb reduction. Obviously, we know that not everything can go because we do care about everybody's safety. Maybe the police officers can do better monitoring speed. Even my Land Cruiser was totaled less than a year ago, parked in the middle of the night. So with the current red, totaled car. So somebody speeding just slammed right into it and took off running. And so there's many things that can be done, in my opinion. For some odd reason, I missed something. I was unaware of the survey that went out in January. So I'm sure you're not going to update your numbers, but we definitely want red curb reduction. I have a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old that still lives at home, and they have to park far when they come home, and I worry about them. And sometimes they have to park where we're located nearer the 7-Eleven. They park down into the neighborhood sometimes, and there's homeless people. We've seen empty syringes. Okay, so I really don't want my kids walking past homeless people, or 1 or 2, even 1 is too many, in the middle of the night, like at 1 o'clock in the morning. I feel very unsafe. I feel like we should be able to park closer to our residents. And I care very deeply about, I'm a teacher, I carry a bunch of stuff, and carrying all this stuff hurts my shoulders, walking to and from my car in the morning when I get home. It's too far. There's really not enough parking. Thank you.
If I might ask a question of you, so you do not have off-street parking for your unit?
It's kind of closer to where the music studios are and the 7-Eleven. So there's very little, and right in front of ours, they have a bunch of red. They took away some parking, but then they reintroduced some. We can park 3 cars right in front of our residence. It should be 4, maybe even 5.
I was referring actually to your unit, your home.
I apologize.
Do you have a garage?
It is a townhouse, but my husband, with his job, he has to bring work supplies, so we use it for his work supplies.
Okay,
So we don't park a car in there. We can't. Sorry.
that's okay.
Is that
Thank you.
it?
That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we have Loroki, Kirk, and then Isabel Heidelwolf. You can.
Good evening, everyone. We are business owners on 598 Mile Lane, being there for last 30 years. The business,
We're the business that filed in there, as one of the close to the 7-Eleven. So we're also close to the unit where they have the loadout section as well. So during the mornings, I know Cynthia earlier was mentioning how trash cans get moved. Our trash cans get moved in that red zone to our right every Tuesday and Friday, so that blocks view. The dip is just enough if there is a bigger car to our left, we can't, or we're kind of blinded. And if their trash can or delivery driver comes park in that red zone, we are very blocked visually. So especially coming in from that light, people tend to speed to try to catch that light just out of habit. So for safety purposes, it would be nice to keep those as red for visibility, at least to the one. There is a spot to our left that it is a parking zone. To the right where the telephone pole is, it is a red. If we could keep that at least red, that would be super helpful, at least to catch visibility, especially if there's a car offloading for the business next door, because then it's almost double parked.
Can we bring that up on the map, the address that she's referring to, so that we can distinguish between red curb and delivery curb?
Yeah, so sometimes it gets double parked because if it is a big truck going in.
So 598, I see you're on the east side.
Yeah.
has an alley between two buildings, and so we have on the red on the left and the right.
A tiny bit.
So as incoming traffic coming from 190th into Meyer Lane, as we know, is going much faster than we said on average on 30 plus miles, whatever that is. When you have a higher car, SUV parked, there is no way you can pull out from the alley into Meyer Lane safely. You're just guessing, and you're guessing every single day. So, and adding another parking spot next to that, absolutely, that should not be a consideration, not for a second.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Isabel, we're
You're
together,
Isabel
yeah.
and then LaRue. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, next is Noreen Schaefer.
Hi, my name is Noreen Schaefer. I have lived on Meyer Lane for more than 50 years, and I have seen things deteriorate dramatically. The church across the street from me, I'm at 801, the church across the street from me currently has a fairly substantial red zone, and that's because traffic coming off of Ralston and looking down the hill has a difficult time seeing oncoming traffic, particularly if there are trucks or SUVs parked in that area. And even now, I have called many times the police department because people park in that red zone irregardless of the fact. And I guess they just figure they'll take their chances because by the time somebody comes by to issue a ticket, they've already left. So red zone parking is already happening there. That's one issue. So I don't really want to see additional parking spaces allotted there. I'd rather see it kept clear for a safety factor for people coming off of Ralston onto Meyer. The other thing I'd like to say is I don't think the survey fully encompassed all of Meyer Lane. It only covered Meyer Lane to Ralston. There's a substantial part of Meyer Lane that continues on to Ripley. And by the time people are really getting up there past the dip, they're going pretty good clip. And the same thing when they come off of Ripley going southbound on Meyer. They go fast. You say the average speed is 30, 31 miles an hour. The posted speed is 25. Why is everybody speeding? What can we do to slow people down? And the fact that the city doesn't have any really good north-south avenues for traffic, With 4,000 cars going up and down Meyer Lane, it's just an impossible situation. There's more and more accidents, more and more near misses. It's a safety issue. I'd really, really like to see something done to reduce the volume. And if that means putting in the speed cushions to slow people down and give them pause about taking Meyer Lane, let them take Ripley or take Inglewood, the streets that are designed for higher traffic volume. That's my preference. Thank you.
We don't have any more cards, but if anyone from the audience would like to speak, you can come on up. If not, we do have we have a hand up on our, on Zoom. If you'd like to speak. No? Anyone else who hasn't spoken, they can come up.
Can we ask a question? As far as, I'd be interested, what would be the outcome of this meeting? What would be the next stage? You hear all these comments and then you guys will have a vote at some point as far as the changes that are proposed?
Yeah,
Will that happen tonight or that happen at a later date or?
You can know what our.
that potentially could happen tonight.
Should happen tonight. We should have some sort of a recommendation, which I guess then, does that have to go further to city council for approval or, right?
No.
Not this
No?
one. The next one will, yeah.
We're, on this one, we've got the final say.
So I have, if you'd like, you can come up and speak. I have a,
And my name is Al Schaefer, and I live at 801 Meyer. And especially the traffic, as soon as they come out of that dip and going over a hill blindly at the speeds they do is maddening. But the other one is people come off 190th and try to drive into the 7-Eleven, when all they have to do is drive down the street and come into that parking lot. There should be, and it's constantly causing a traffic jam there at the bottom, but because people are, because you know what happens when people come flying down the side of a street and don't see somebody coming across. And that's what happens is why these people try to come down through traffic to get into that parking lot, I have no idea. Instead of just driving down, coming into the back of it. And it would be nice if they just made that one way out and one way in, would solve a big traffic jam.
Yeah, it just does.
okay. I have Karen Reed with her hand up on Zoom. Karen,
Yes, can you hear me?
we can hear you.
I don't know how to share my video. However, I am Karen Reed. I live at 700 Meyer Lane, unit number 7. I've been there for almost 10 years. I am strongly opposed to reducing the red curb in front of our complex. You've heard several comments already, so I don't really want to repeat what my neighbors have said. However, I just want to point out a couple additional things. So the 700 Meyer driveway is actually a shared driveway with 720 Meyer, which is also, I believe, an even larger complex than ours, which is 16 units. And so at one time, you can have up to 4 cars coming in and out, which complicates things. We're not talking about a single family home with a one-way driveway of one vehicle. The red curb right now, as it stands, gets taken up pretty much every day, as was mentioned by the mailman, FedEx, people parking there and taking their chances in the red zone. And it really is extremely dangerous. You cannot see cars coming northbound from 190th. And it creates an extremely dangerous situation every time that we pull out of the driveway. There have been many instances where it's blocked and I've decided to turn right going northbound because I cannot see. And even when I do that, there'll still be a car coming and you get honking and, people get angry because you've now pulled in front of someone. So I realize that there's no standard regarding the red curbs and, we're looking at this as a standard driveway, but it's really not a standard driveway. And I implore the council to not give up this red curve just for the sake of one parking spot. I feel for all the residents. I understand what they're saying. I wish there was more parking, but to create such a dangerous situation for one spot just doesn't make sense to me. I want to reiterate, there's been 4 accidents that were pretty major. A 30-mile-per-hour T-bone accident can cause significant damage and injury. And 3,500 cars on a street per day is way above what a residential street should see. I believe it's under 1,000 cars per day would be considered a residential street. So we're dealing with a street that's not really residential. There's businesses at the end. So it's a very complicated situation. And if you go out there and look and try to pull out of our driveway, you'll see what I'm talking about. So please take that into consideration when you make your decision. Thank you.
I have iPhone that would like to talk. It has their hand raised, but please state your name.
Hi, good evening. This is Nick Verhey. I apologize. I am a resident at 800 Meyer Lane. Have been following this since the beginning of the year. As another resident in my building stated, parking for this particular building is pretty limited. And I am very empathetic to folks' concerns down in the 700 block. And as I advocated for earlier in the year, I'm certainly willing to compromise, right? You know, I don't want to sit here and dictate what I think is right for the whole block. And I would expect the same from them. I do think the visibility scenarios are different here in the 800 block versus where they are in the 700 block. And with respect to Ralston, I know I heard some kind of concerns there, but Ralston is elevated above, I guess, what would be the northbound direction of Meyer. And I have certainly had several times of traveling westbound on Ralston and then making a left onto Meyer, where I've seen vehicles parked in the red, and never once have I thought that was obstructing the view. I do support the idea of speed bumps or speed cushions, something that slows traffic down. But as another person already pointed out, the red curbs are not slowing people down. And I don't think that from 25 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour is really saving anybody. With the red curbs aren't solving that problem. The problem still persists one way or another. So just speaking in behalf of the handful of people who do have serious parking issues, I think there's a compromise to be had, and would certainly advocate to reduce some of the red curb on the 800 block while still being mindful of the concerns down on the 700 block. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all on Zoom that have their hand raised at this time. So we
Have any e-comments?
do have e-comments. Let me just refresh real quick. So we have 7 total e-comments. We have 5 that oppose and 2 that are in support of this item.
To be clear, that's 5 supporting removal of the red and 2 supporting keeping it as it is.
No, other way around.
Okay, so 5 are opposed to removing any red curb.
Or opposed to, okay.
And then there are
Which is the
2
issue we're discussing, whether or not we're going to or not.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
that's why I asked, just so I'm
Staff
clear.
is recommending to remove it, correct?
Right.
That's what the, right.
And then 2 are supportive of removing red curb.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions, thoughts, comments?
So I have a quick comment. So in front of 700, obviously 700 is a very contentious plot here. In looking at the extent of the red curb, it looks like it's quite long. So you're saying visibility is still obstructed given that the length of that red curb? Now, having said that, I know some people have mentioned that, the postal carrier or UPS, Amazon drivers are using that as an illegal stop. Does the city or like local law enforcement, do we have any data in terms of like what the, any violations or, what, in terms of kind of surveillance there? Has there been an abnormal amount of illegal parking?
We have not asked that question of the police department or parking enforcement. I don't even know if they would keep that kind of data for very long, but we could ask the question.
Is it possible to ask the police department to make a point of enforcing the red curb rules that exist?
We can certainly recommend that to them.
All those people on 700 who get Amazon.
Okay.
With that, with the red curb at the 700 block, since it is such a long opening, wouldn't it be better to have parking there instead of having a large box truck? As far as visibility goes?
So the only thing is when we speak and we're not at the dais, they can't hear on Zoom.
Yeah, we can't
So you'll
communicate.
have,
You have
if
to
we're
come up.
going to engage, they need to either come up, but technically they had their 3 minutes.
Yes, right, so, okay.
If you want to ask a question of them, you can ask them to come.
Right, it seems to me that we have, the 700 block seems to want to keep all the red curb. The 800 block seems to want to remove some of it. Am I getting that impression correctly?
My scorekeeping
And I'm looking at the map.
seems to indicate that the northbound side, the east side of the street, prefers more red curb for visibility issues, both at the 700
Oh, both.
and the residents at 801 mentioned, what I heard was the parking in front of the church, which is the east side of the street. That's across the street from them, but that was the concern about visibility was for northbound vehicles. So you might consider a compromise between keeping more red curb on the northbound side and creating more parking spaces on the southbound side, based on the feedback tonight.
As an example, if we look at the map in front of 2300, the church, you'll see, and it's just below Ralston Lane, and that's where you start to going up the incline. So cars are accelerating, and they're not thinking about anybody pulling out off of Ralston onto Meyer. They're just trying to get up to Ripley. And yet, it wasn't stated that from your observations that there was a visibility issue. I do see two options of where we could eke out 2 spaces by going a little further uphill towards Ralston Lane and still leave
34 feet,
34 feet,
which
allows a car westbound on Ralston to pull out about 5 feet beyond the curb and look left down the hill and right up the hill. So that's one option, to eke out 2 spots. As we go further down from there, though, it gets a lot more congested. You got the commercial stuff on the east side of the building or east side of the street, I should say, and some large complexes there. So it's tough on, and I appreciate the testimony from public because I don't live on Meyer Lane, but to hear that that our trash hauler, Athens, puts their trash cans, well, that's an obstruction of view to some extent, but we know they do it in my neighborhood. It's what they, easily do on trash day. The big box delivery, whether it's Amazon or UPS, and anyone else who's parking illegally, I think that's where, gosh, it almost seems like Meyer Lane would be ripe for a little ticket writing party, I think, in my book. So maybe we have the option of always advising the police department to beef up their operations enforcement. But I tell you, and this commission is not fan of speed humps. But we're mindful. 85 percentile just means that 85 out of 100 cars are going 31. But yes, a T-bone at 30 miles an hour can be disastrous. And yet we know cars are faster now. They handle better. They brake better. Even the entry-level economy cars, people are speeding, and it's the 15% I know they're going a lot faster because they go a lot faster. So maybe we discuss speed humps, maybe one pair in the right place.
It seemed to me that there's two, I mean, the formal issue before us, I think, is the red curbing and how much to remove and whether it should be done. But from what I heard from the comments tonight, there was as much interest and concern about speed and the need to have traffic calming.
So traffic calming is on the agenda, so you're free to talk about that and make recommendations in that regard. The city council has set a policy for speed cushions. We do not fall within that policy to
Yeah.
even consider them without them doing something extraordinary. So if that's your recommendation, we can certainly take it to the city council, but it would just be advised it would be against their stated policy for when we would consider. In fact, we would even need to start with them before we could do the traffic study as their policy states. So it could happen. It's, there's no reason, they couldn't look at it and consider doing a waiver of their policy for doing this, but just that's a little bit more uphill than that battle normally is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only because it was said earlier, and I don't think red curb slows anybody down.
No.
It's not even one of the tools in our shed to do that. We don't have any white striping, though, on the parallel, do we?
No, we only have that commercial loading zone, which was also one of the questions of the survey is, do we bump that, forward an hour? Perhaps someone who wants to park overnight.
Did you mean edgeline striping?
I meant edgeline striping,
edgeline striping.
between the parked cars and the driving lanes.
Street's probably too narrow for that.
Is there width for that?
There is width for it, but I would say that the edgeline striping is most effective on streets that don't have a high parking occupancy rate. So a street like Meyer Lane where there's consistently a lot of cars parked there, that acts as an edgeline in some cases because there's just that much friction, not that much distance between the curb and where people are driving. But certainly that can be explored.
And just another tool that we know often when you kind of visually make the road look a little more narrow than it actually, the white stripes.
Right, white stripes do.
And
I don't know if that street is wide enough. Did Ryan say it's wide enough?
Yes, the street
I think
is.
he did say it was.
The street is wide enough, so the way it can be, if there's white edgeline striping to visually narrow the lane, we could visually narrow the lanes to 10 feet. But as I was saying before, the presence of a parked car already narrows the lane to 10 feet.
Yeah. Okay.
So the city could take it upon themselves to do a resident survey and ask about speed humps, right?
So the speed cushion policy requires that we have 8 or 9
Residential
boxes
flood.
we have to check before we can start the speed study. It's up to the residents to collect sufficient signatures. That's not staff's job. That would be the residents. So that's the way the policy works right now.
Yeah.
So we've already failed on at least a couple of those checklist items. So we would kind of need a waiver, if you will, I'm using that word, I don't know if it's the right word, from the council to pursue this. So a referral from council, for instance, or something like that.
And I think one of the challenges with the speed cushion policy, as it's stated, since it is usually resident-driven, it's easier to get that level of support when there's not quite as many multifamily complexes on the street.
Yeah.
I could imagine that if a resident wanted to collect signatures, they would have a hard time getting access to all these buildings, knocking on all 291 of these doors.
Hence only 18% apply on the survey.
Replied anyway.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so further discussion, do we have an idea of where we should be going here? Is there any particular motion that we'd like to make?
Well, I came up with 2 parking spots. What else are you guys looking at? And that's across the street from, it's in front of the church, so, that hopefully doesn't even impact those that live directly across the street from the
So
church
you're
there.
suggesting remove for those 2 spots, but leave everything else the way it is? Is that your thought?
That's where I would start, yeah. And
You could use the support, percentage support as a guide, perhaps.
I thought about that earlier, Ryan, and yet this is just, survey from the
Yes.
people. And were they able to really deliberate with others and hear other people talk and see these maps. And I remember in 2018, that delivery zone, further down.
Yeah.
When we were, yeah. So we've known this has always been a challenging street because of just the sheer number, the volume of people and cars and residents in that, on that one section.
So what do you think? Is that, staff right now is recommending more than removing 2. You're recommending,
Well, we're identifying 16. We don't have a strong recommendation for any number. For instance, if you, again, my hearing tonight was the southbound side doesn't seem to be quite as much of an issue as the northbound side. If you were to remove red curb as proposed for just the southbound side, you'd gain 7 spaces of the 16 that are possible that we've identified. That may be enough to satisfy. There may be other spaces on the northbound side.
would that leave the ones that people are hoping to keep?
Yeah, I believe the concern at 700 is on the northbound side.
Northbound side?
Yeah, that one had only 58%.
And then
So it was one of the lower ones compared to the others.
I think it was Maureen, if I got your name right, lived at 801, and she identified actually across the street from her in front of the church, which is, I don't know what the address of the church is.
2300 Ralston.
That's the Ralston address, yeah. Okay, but it's up at the end of the 800 block. So from what I heard from the audience, there wouldn't be as strong an objection to removing red curb on the southbound lanes, those 7 spaces, and you could maintain what we have on the northbound and get about half of the available parking that we've identified that could be gained if you were to remove all the red curb that was studied here. So,
Given the surveys that the cities have done, if parking is such a concern in this area, how do we see an overload of parked cars north of Ralston on Meyer and on Ralston? Because there's a lot of non-red curbs. So given those non-red curbs, are we seeing those packed full of cars?
We haven't done a parking survey on Meyer Lane north of Ralston, but there are less multifamily complexes there.
It's just the multifamily
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah, but if there's a lack of parking, you would think naturally they would be parking up there, right?
Perhaps.
They're trying to find parking, so they're going up there. So if we had a survey, we can see how congested those areas are, which would be indicative of traffic demand, or parking demand.
It would be difficult to track, if someone from the 700 or 800 block was parking their car north of Ralston and walking back. That would be a pretty.
we have that capability.
Yeah.
We have to get the police department involved because they do it based on license plate, and that license plate address information is privileged. So we wouldn't be able to do that from our department, but we've done that before for parking studies. So.
But just so I'm clear, Andy, are you proposing removing the red curb on the west side of the street, the southbound?
I'm saying I didn't hear strong objections to that side of the street.
Because I'm counting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces from Harrimore Court all the way down to pretty much the 7-Eleven versus anything on the east side or northbound side of the street where.
Wouldn't remove anything there, and that's where people are concerned about the visibility issues, and from what I heard.
That's what I heard, yes.
I would like to still highlight the response from 711 Meyer that, that driveway is only serving their own house, and they were, like a lot of responses, were opposed to the reduction of red curb. But that's just the nature of these surveys, is you're asking the whole neighborhood, and generally people are supportive of removing at driveways other than their own.
Yeah, which is why I'm not keen on 7-Eleven and 713, because that's coming down the hill, that's people pulling out of their driveway. Yeah.
What do you think? Anybody got a motion here or an idea, solution?
gonna have to agree with Futabachi. Do you like what he's stated? I think it's a good start.
Which was the 7?
Yeah, without,
That's only one area, so this is very location-based decision.
But that, well, if that's, does anyone care to make that motion? I guess the motion would be to direct staff to remove the curb, the 7 red curves identified on the southbound side.
yeah, that was not what, I was actually just looking at the 2 spots in front of it.
Yeah,
It's very, you know what, as much as I drive, I don't live on that street, but I drive it from time to time. It's a different way home. And so, but it's still hard for me to visualize pulling in and out of these driveways. And, you know, I'm only going from the aerial view. I don't think that I have, there was sight lines mentioned, which none of that actually meets. You know, you tell us the sight lines are good, but, and I also didn't hear, it was mentioned that there were 4 out of 16 units that were involved in accidents. I didn't hear anything about the Switters report or any reportable accidents. Do we have any of that data?
That wasn't something we looked into. We purely, did this on, the physical conditions of the road compared to, other streets of similar type.
Yeah. But we also learned too that, the practical application or, what actually, the reality of it is what happens is really what we should be, trying to focus on. And it's just kind of difficult looking at every little, each little section of what moving one parking space, all of them on the east side, or excuse me, on the west side, southbound.
Southbound traffic. That would be, if you took all the ones out there that are recommended, that would be 7 spaces you gained.
Yeah, 7 spaces on the west side of the street.
Right. And again,
I think
am I correct in
It's going to be hard to look at everything one-off. So I think the most efficient way to do this is, number one, we have to take what the survey says. So we have to go off what the residents are saying. And most of them are saying every single location has a predominant number of percentage supporting the removal. Okay, so we start there. The second is we can peel back one-offs to look at areas in which there's larger resistance or opposition of local residents.
Absolutely.
700 Meyer.
Right.
So we look at that in totality and then do some peel-offs of those one-off scenarios in which we could say, okay, maybe we leave this in because we have, certain number of sentiment around this one particular area.
So where does that leave us with vis-a-vis?
Absolutely, and we also know that a lot of the survey that said remove it, did it because they want parking, not because they have to pull out of that driveway.
Yeah.
So,
So I mean, we can,
okay, I'm sorry, one of the testimony tonight was the 50 feet, what is your address again? 700 Meyer. You are 700, so you are on the east side of the street. Okay. And the red curb that you're referring to would be in front of 630?
No, this is the red curb, and this is the driveway for 700 Meyer. It also serves 720 Meyer. And so there's currently 51 feet of red curb.
Okay, so and this is a little confused because we're looking at 2 different pictures for Meyer, and I'm trying to, okay, so then we go up to,
The photo on the left is the northern part, and the photo on the right is the southern part. 7-Eleven is on the bottom of the right-hand picture.
It's the business 7-Eleven.
I'll remind the commission that paint can be removed and paint can be put back. So there's opportunities to adjust if the perfect solution doesn't present itself tonight.
are there any areas that commissioners feel those red curbs should be in place?
Well, I mean, I thought I heard concern from the
At 700.
people
At
tonight.
700.
On the east
So
side.
700 could be one that, let's say we leave in,
Well, weren't there other ones as well?
are there, yeah, so I'm saying, are there other ones that we feel strongly about leaving in? Given the sentiment around 700, in exchange for one parking space, I think there could be some concessions made there. Are there anywhere else that we feel, given the survey, given the,
Yeah, unless there's any objection, we can do all the southbound west side. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7.
And leave everything else as it is on the northbound.
That's an
Well,
option.
I would say, except for maybe the 2 spaces up by the church, that it shows up there.
Well, those may be there for the reason of people dropping people off at the church, right? The car
We
comes
actually,
in.
so when we talked about this item in January, we reached out to the church and they didn't really know why there was that much red curb.
Well, that's often why they've put them there in the past, I think, but around other churches.
Well, yeah, or it would be yellow.
It'd be white, actually,
Or
for
white.
passenger drop
For
off.
passenger drop-off.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Not delivery, but passenger drop-off, yeah.
So we have 2 there. Could we,
So we could take 7 on the west side and 2 in front of the church, and eke out 9.
And then the rest stay?
And then the rest stay.
I'm okay with that.
7 on the west side?
7 on the west side, 2 on the east.
And is there any thoughts on the loading zone? So the current loading zone that's there, we're not changing the dimensions of it, but it's currently restricted to commercial loading 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekdays. We talked to each of the businesses inside 510 Meyer, and they are okay with pushing that forward to 8 a.m.
So, yeah, so that was going to be my question. So you did talk with them.
Yeah, so
yeah,
then
that
if-
would be part of the motion as
Yeah.
well, to change that.
And then also urge the police department to enforce the red curb.
Okay, I'll make a motion to remove the red striped parking on the west side of the street to create 7 new parking spaces, red curb on the east side northbound of the street to open up 2 spaces in front of the church,
Jason Ralston.
to change the parking zone, the loading zone to 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. weekdays, and to advise RBPD of potential violations with parking
Increase enforcement, yeah.
to increase enforcement.
Is there a second for the motion?
I second the motion.
Sorry, who seconded that?
That'd be me.
Could I repeat that back to you just so we're clear?
Of course.
So on the west side of Meyer, all the recommendations, so that's plus 7 spaces. Meyer and Ralston southeast corner, plus 2 spaces. The loading zone, the yellow curb loading zone, extending that to 8 a.m. and talking to the police department about doing more red curb enforcement along this street.
That's it?
And, we could add excessive speed and parking.
We will certainly make the recommendation whether or not
They'll
it's in the
get,
motion.
if they're there and they see something, yeah, right.
Okay, I guess we could have a roll call vote.
Yes, Commissioner Funabashi,
Aye.
Commissioner Beely,
Aye.
Commissioner Zhao,
Aye.
Chair Simpson.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thanks all for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll all keep in touch.
Okay, I guess
Compromise
we
at its
now
best.
move on to item J2. You're all invited to stay and have comments on that if you wish.
Is there going to be a motion to look at the curb, the cushions?
Not at this time.
For an exemption on the
No, let me get the procedure right on that. I think there has to be petitions from the residents to get that started, right? Is that correct?
Or an exemption, or asking them for an exemption, or how you say.
Reach out to your council.
Paige, you're a Council 3 district person.
Paige Kalajedovich.
Yep.
That's the way to do it, is to.
We can't, staff can't start, sorry, I'm speaking out of
You
turn
may,
here.
of course.
Explain it.
Staff can't start the process because we're already not, we haven't gone, able to get through our checklist. So we would need council to give us specific direction to look at that. So my recommendation would be contact your council member, ask her if she would consider a referral, what's called a referral, for staff to look at a special case regarding speed cushions.
That's those rubber bumpers. So many other places that are busy.
Yep, there's a process that we want to follow. Not everybody likes them, and so there's,
Yeah, because if you had checked the speed on the other side of Ralston, you would have saw a big difference.
Yeah.
35 miles to 30 miles.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. Move on to item J2, discussion and possible action on the installation of a marked crosswalk on Del Amo
Came up just
Boulevard
last
at
month.
Molina Street.
So we received a referral from the Public Works and Sustainability Commission at the June meeting to explore the potential for a marked crosswalk at the intersection of Del Amo Street and Paulina Avenue. Staff at the city, we reached out to the school district and the South Bay Bike Coalition for any input that they might have. The Bike Coalition also is involved in pedestrian safety issues. That's why we also asked for further input. Both organizations were strongly in favor of improving pedestrian crossing conditions at this location and in general. Engineers from the city, including myself, performed visibility and sight distance observations at this intersection, which we will go through some photos here. So here are the existing conditions at the intersection of Del Amo and Paulina from the driver's perspective. So this camera shot was taken from what a driver would typically see, positioned slightly from the left of the lane in a seated position. The picture at the left is eastbound Del Amo from the roadway. So here's Paulina. The fire hydrant over here is approximately where a pedestrian would wait to cross the street and cross to this west leg here. Staff's current recommendation is to stripe that crosswalk on the west leg of the intersection. That side is a shorter crossing and has slightly better visibility than the east leg of the intersection. This picture on the right is the view from westbound Del Amo coming from Prospect from the roadway, Paulina to the right. As you can see, a pretty good visibility of the two sides of the street over here. Here are some photos from the pedestrian point of view. So this was me standing on the north side, northwest corner of the intersection, looking east towards Prospect. As you can see, there's adequate visibility for a vehicle coming westbound. This is that same location looking west. This is, although there's a bit of a curve in the road, there is enough visibility to see to the next intersection. That car here is still pretty visible. Here's the south side of the street from the driveway that also serves Redondo Unified Facilities and the Continuation High School and BCHD's administrative offices. So this is looking east towards Prospect, as you can see, pretty good sight lines here. And looking west, also pretty good sight lines, looking towards the coast. Here is an exhibit of the proposed striping for this crosswalk. As you can see, it's more than just a crosswalk. More than just crosswalk striping. I'll explain that. So we are proposing, the typical continental yellow crosswalk striping as we are in a school zone with the appropriate crosswalk signage. We're also proposing extending the bicycle lanes on Del Amo Street to Prospect. Currently, the bicycle lanes end at Paulina Avenue, and there's a gap where bicycles have to share the road with other drivers. What we would put here is extending that bicycle lane all the way up to Prospect. This also serves as a traffic calming measure by narrowing the lanes so that drivers coming from Prospect or Del Amo from the east, they will have a narrower lane when they're coming in onto Del Amo, and that helps them slow down a bit more. And if there's a pedestrian waiting to cross, it improves the visibility and time to react to yield to the pedestrians. We're also We also have enough space to put a small striped median here where we can put a sign in the middle of the road that tells drivers that is, by law, they have to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. These signs in the middle are flexible. If they're hit, they usually pop back up and are easily replaceable. But they do serve as a traffic calming measure by adding, a vertical fixture in the middle of the road that, drivers tend to slow down when they pass through a device like this. So all these measures, not just the crosswalk striping, but the bike lane striping, help tighten up the roadway a little bit, prepare drivers that they are they're entering a school zone, and that there is a marked crosswalk here, and to look for pedestrians who might be crossing the street here. One thing I forgot to add at the beginning is that at every intersection in California is a legal crosswalk, whether it is marked or unmarked. So what staff is recommending here is a formalization of that crosswalk by showing that this is a location where pedestrians can cross. But right now, today, the pedestrians are legally allowed to cross at this intersection, and drivers are legally required to yield. So this striping would not change the legal perspective of the interactions between pedestrians and motorists, but could help improve the safety and yielding compliance.
And for that reason, this also will not need to go to council. If you make the recommendation, we can implement this at a staff level.
So the alternatives available to the commission are to recommend the installation of the marked crosswalk at this intersection on the west leg. Staff would implement this at the next available opportunity that we can get our on-call striping contractor out. I believe they've been around the city restriping streets at districts 3 and 4. We'll try to get them, if approved, to stripe this crosswalk as well. And our sign crew can then come in and install the signs at the same time. The commission could also not recommend to install this crosswalk.
Out of curiosity, what's it cost to put the striping down? A couple of thousand?
Yeah, we expect in the couple thousand range, but this is something we can usually absorb in our yearly striping budget. And the signage can come from our traffic calming funds.
Right. Other questions?
Quick question, Ryan. So the striping south of the street on Del Amo, west of Juanita, is that a bike lane? Is that a little mini bike lane? What is that?
Yes, there are existing bike lanes on Del Amo Street east of Diamond. But once you go, I believe Del Amo Street continues as Juanita. There are no bike lanes on Juanita west of Diamond. But this stretch of Del Amo east of Diamond does have bicycle lanes up to this intersection, up to the Paulina intersection.
So the one south of it is a little bike lane?
Yes, there are currently bike lanes here.
Right there, okay.
Yeah, and so they currently end here, and then there's a 1 block long gap where there's no bike lanes. And so this proposed striping would extend that a block further, just to provide that dedicated space and traffic calming benefits for the crosswalk.
The way you show the sign here, the yield sign, that's back a ways from where the crosswalk is going to be. Would that, so only traffic on one side would see it before the crosswalk, right? Shouldn't you have two?
So we
Or
thought
you have
about
it right in the center of the crosswalk?
Yeah, we thought about putting it at the exact location of the crosswalk, but because of the existing striping, we are hesitant to put one of those signs where we don't have some buffer space around it. Technically, these signs can fit within the yellow center line. They are just as wide as the center line. Some cities do install that, and with no additional buffer. Yeah, but those tend to get damaged more often. So we're proposing to put it on the east leg of the street where there is a little bit more space to provide that, a small striped median about 4 feet in width. So that way that creates 2 feet on each side for some buffer space.
But that only advises cars going in the westbound direction.
Yeah, but you will still be able to see it in the eastbound direction. And, I think with the eastbound direction, the drivers are a little bit slower compared to coming from the westbound direction where they've just come off of a higher speed street.
Yeah, it does say double-sided.
It is double-sided. Yeah, it is a double-sided sign.
I'm quite familiar with this intersection. I would say what you're proposing is quite warranted because of a lot of e-bikes traveling around that area. I've seen so many accidents right on the other corner, which is right off Lucia. where there is a crosswalk. So I think it's very warranted. I would be completely in supportive of this, except for one thing, which is removing of the conflicting striping that you put on there.
Oh, there's just 3 little dashes for that right turn
Okay.
lane?
That is actually so needed. Because without that, because that striping was put in actually over the last few years. Without it, it is, I mean, everyone's trying to jockey for position there, trying to make that right turn. So if there's any little sliver of space, people are trying to fit their car right in to make that right. Because in the morning, it's so congested, everyone trying to make that right has to wait for the traffic signal on Prospect to turn green before they can proceed to make that right. So a lot of people try to sliver in. So that little striping actually helps delineate lanes a little bit there.
And that's the trade-off between providing dedicated space for cyclists and narrowing the lane versus providing additional space
Yeah.
for right turns to queue. So it is a trade-off where we don't have space for both. So that's why we're hesitant to extend the bike lane even more. But that can be part of the recommendation to not extend the bike lane quite as far.
Yeah, that's an option, right? Just those 3 little dots, don't do the conflict, keep the white dots there, and then move the bike lane, what is that, 10 feet?
It might be about 40 feet.
Or is it really for those 3 dots?
If this car is about 15, 16 feet long, it could be about 30.
Oh, yeah, you're right, when you put it in that perspective, yeah. It's about 30, yeah. But it's an option.
We might be splitting hairs at this point too, because no matter what the striping, if the right turn vehicles are queuing back, they might just start driving in the bike lane anyways, which is a different issue, but
Yeah.
part of this discussion.
People get aggressive around that little corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Public comment?
Yes, please.
You could come on up. Sure.
Hi, Jeremy Douglas again. I had 2 sons graduate from Redondo Beach High School. Grew up there, spent a lot of time in that area. I used to live down the street on Lucia. Watching the kids with the bikes and everything, I'm on this road, I travel this all the time, I have a warehouse just over on Anza. Spending the money right here, that gate is closed. These kids, they need to, if anything, mitigate the traffic where they go around the fields, down that way. All the kids go that way, going that way. They also need to cross by the high school if we're gonna focus on that. They need to be in that direction. You're making a crosswalk into a closed sidewalk, that gate's always closed. There's no public, the school, kids aren't accessing, that's the utility section. And so I think spending that money, and he says thousands, I'm gonna say, no, it's gonna be 5,000. By the time he gets done painting and striping and moving all that stuff, it's gonna be a lot of money spent there, and I don't think we're gonna get the bang. I think they gotta definitely focus. Like you said, it's a public, if you want to cross, it's legal to cross in California at that section. You teach your kid how to cross the road. You look both ways and whatever. To spend all that money right there, where maybe we need to focus where the kids funnel across to get to the high school, or when they're funneling into that intersection over there, trying to get down around the fields and out. That's where I see a lot of the traffic, and they're cutting across, they're going down Vons. And that's, if we're gonna do any safety issues, I think you gotta work on that main intersection if it's needed. Putting all that money into that section, and the lighting, if there's gonna be flashing lights, I don't think the houses, the people's in those houses on the corner are gonna appreciate flashing lights, even though I know you can cup them and all that. It just seems like a lot of money's gonna be spent there that doesn't, it's like, you may drive that as well, but I just don't see it. I've been driving them up and down there for years and years. And again, the kids are going in the crosswalks over there to spend that money, that bang with bang. They don't, cross here, put up a warning sign, you're gonna restripe it, repaint it, put all this stuff in. We are coming down to Lama. I drove it today 3 times, back and forth, down to here. And so it's what we're gonna call it, a bottleneck. There's not really, there's a merge anyway. We merged back there, back and coming, and into almost a single lane and coming down. So I'd look at the costs again and see if that's really where we want to put the money, and whether the people in the neighborhood would be affected by the lighting. And then that's my comment on it, and just with a little background, so. Thank
Is
you.
there gonna be any lighting there?
I don't think there's any lighting.
We're not proposing the, what is called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So it's those horizontal lights that when you press the button, the lights flash. We're not proposing that at this time.
Just the
It's
paint.
cer- It's
Just the
certainly.
paint to mark the crosswalks. so
Yes, that's
people know
it, paint
where
and
they should cross.
signs. That is certainly a possibility to look at flashing lights at the crosswalk, but like the public comment said, we are sensitive about putting those close to homes due to the light effects, but that is a trade-off that can be revisited at a future date if this crosswalk is approved.
But just to be clear, so we're not putting any flashing, it's really the paint, the
it's just
signage,
paint,
and redoing the bike lane. And then, obviously, we made a little modification to the conflict there. And do I have it clear? Because it actually is an open gate now. And the students that go to the continuation school, Pat Dreisler, they're going down that way. And this kind of came from the neighborhood because a significant number of kids are already crossing. And this just funnels them to, and I got to tell you, I mean, as an adult driver, I think we get a little leery when we're driving around a school and there isn't a marked crosswalk. We know that we have to yield, but if a kid comes around, at least with a crosswalk, we know it's coming up. And a driver
It's a signal to slow down.
see, it's a signal to slow down.
Right.
And certainly if there's kids there, it'll get used.
Well, that utility road is also now open because Beach City's
They
health
have their-
district is
they have
down
their
there.
office there.
And Alcove has a certain, they have this little program for mental health that they run, has some offices. My son actually interned and actually go down there. So it is used quite often. that road now.
I missed that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so, any other comment online? Or
I think you had a motion, except for alternating the conflicting stripe.
Yeah, I mean.
And it's pretty much staff's recommendation.
Motion to, well.
Hang on a
unless
second,
there's
was there any public comment on this? I don't think.
No, there's no e-comments, and the person that's on Zoom has not raised their hand.
Okay, so the motion is, do you want to make it?
Make a motion to continue with, to agree with the city's proposal to install a crosswalk, the west leg of Delamo Paulina intersection, but not removing the conflicting striping.
So not reducing the length of that right turn lane.
Yes.
So adopt the staff's recommendation except for reducing the bike lane striping. Is that?
Reduce the bike lane so that we don't have conflicting striping, I think is what we want to do.
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
second that.
Okay. Can we,
Westbound lane's gonna stay, it's gonna have a bike lane on the west side. We're gonna pull that over, so it's gonna still go, that'll drop down to a single lane there. The west side, when you come from Delano.
Yeah, on the north side.
North side.
Westbound Delamo is already one lane right at the Prospect intersection. So there are two lanes east of it. In the city of Torrance, there's two westbound lanes on Delamo. One of those becomes the right turn lane onto Prospect. So we're not changing the configuration.
all right, so we got the motion seconded and.
All right,
Oh,
we will, Commissioner Funabashi,
Aye.
Commissioner Beely,
aye.
Commissioner Sao,
Aye.
Chair Simpson.
Aye.
All right. That
Back
is
to the
it.
PC, and oh my, that is all the stuff that we were considering for action tonight. This may be a short meeting. Do we have any member items for referrals to staff? Commissioner Funabashi.
Not a referral, just a wow. Anita at just east of PCH has taken on a whole new look. That the pocket lane that's being redone. And the only thing I would ask staff to keep an eye on is that the split about at the top of the hill where it's all, you got to get over to the left or go right northbound on PCH. That striping might be it's already a little challenging because
It was a change, and we've actually heard about it from Commissioner Bajaj as well. That's something we are looking at. We will be taking counts and looking at the video data when school starts and potentially considering a change if it's warranted. So we are monitoring that.
Here.
You're talking about the bottom when we turn down the hill?
Yeah.
I did that tonight.
Oh, the island.
Yeah, they increased the distance of the pocket, the left turn pocket, which is great. Although I tell you, that pocket, sometimes you could run it halfway up the hill and but most of the time it's okay, but it's better, so. That's all I have.
Other referrals to staff?
No, at this point.
Nope. Nope. Guess that's it. We probably need a motion to adjourn. Would someone care to make that motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
To our meeting on August 26th.
With that, this is the first meeting that we can discuss whether or not we'll have a quorum, and whether or not we need to cancel the meeting for lack of quorum. I wanted to let you know that we do not, at this point in time, since there's no referral to staff of significance, and we don't have any items that are prepared that we're looking towards August at this point in time. So we can certainly come and open the
So
meeting.
Lauren is referring to new council, is it ordinance that was passed? I believe it was ordinance or?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have.
we
Direction
have-
from
yes.
council, I think it was the ordinance that the commissions can declare no business.
Yeah, but staff can't do it.
You're right. So you would declare that at the meeting prior, no further away than the next meeting. And if you decide that there is no business, you would adjourn to the meeting 2 months from now instead of 1 month from now.
And we don't know if there's business, except that you're telling us there's no business.
Staff has, we're kind of through our list of things that we're prepared to bring forward. We are
Don't we
still.
have some
We do.
pending
We
report
have
on?
some
Big smile,
Well,
right?
the one item is the native planting policy. So if that's the one item at this
I'm sorry,
point
the
that
plant-
potentially,
Planning item. So we do have a reason to come.
For-
if you're prepared
no,
and
present
Yeah.
hear that.
I'm sorry, what's the reason for the planting?
The pollinator.
The native plant.
The native plant and pollinator policy.
Yeah, and we're waiting on a report.
We're going to blame the person who's not here.
That's fair, you always want to do that. But will we have a report to discuss for sure at that meeting, or do we don't know?
I believe that Commissioner Arata gets back from her business trip shortly, and I think we'll be able to get it done within the next 3 weeks. Sir, don't look at her, she doesn't know.
If that, well, I mean, maybe we want to make sure before, maybe we should,
Well, maybe to be appropriate for me to say I will not be at that August 28th meeting.
that's a good item, good
Yeah,
thing to
I can
note.
tell, August
Okay.
26th is a Monday. I will not be in town.
I may not.
well, all right, it doesn't sound like we're much of any business anyway, so let's adjourn to the following September meeting. Is that, we need a motion to do that, I guess.
yes, we would do.
Someone care to make that motion?
That would be September 23rd.
You can make it in your adjournment motion.
Yeah, in the motion, would somebody please move to adjourn till September 23rd?
Motion to adjourn the meeting and adjourn till September 23rd,
Second.
22nd.
No, I second it.
Third.
It's 23rd.
23rd, you second.
Okay, do we need a roll call on that, or we just do a
Yeah, we
voice?
could do a voice vote on that one.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's what we're doing.
Very good.